All right, we are back live from Nashville, Tennessee for the AIHce Conference and Exposition. I'm Bob Krell, founder and publisher of Healthy Indoors magazine, again joined by my co-host from the Indoor Environment Show, Mr. Don Weeks, who is the president of the Indoor Environmental Quality Global Alliance. And we're joined by two illustrious guests from Acjh, which I'll let Don introduce. But
thank you. Yeah, thanks. Good to see you both, by the way. This is my old working group not that many years ago.
Not that long ago.
No, so Frank, first we'll go with, I served as the executive director of the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists, Acjh, since 2018, hard to believe.
Right.
He is also the publisher of the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Hygiene. And Frank is a certified association executive, a CAE. He is a graduate of Michigan State School of Law, and which he showed me on one of my last visits to Lansing.
That's right.
And he also has an undergraduate degree in business administration from Michigan State Eli Brand College of Business. How are you this morning?
Well, we're just excited to be in person in Nashville for just a tremendous conference of industry colleagues, peers, and friends.
So that's my first question. Actually, could you share some of your thoughts on the return of the AIHC in Nashville?
Certainly, Don, and that's a great question. It goes to show that here we are again in Nashville. It's been 3 long years for the AIHce conference to pull together something of this because of the pandemic, of course, and boy, we'll never take for granted the opportunity to meet in person again. We are appreciative the opportunity to not only meet, but to have those, what my old mentor used to tell me, the hallway conversations that goes beyond what you could ever achieve in many cases on a screen in a virtual meeting space. Those trust relationships, the body language, the intonation that goes with some very serious scientific conversations, but also, again, the collegiality, the ability to network and connect with your peers in the industry that really will then advance the overall OEHS community going forward.
Great, thank you, Frank. And our other guest is Don Elswick. He's the current chair of Acjh. He's also the executive director of the University of Alabama Safe State Division of Industrial and Environmental Programs. Don is a certified industrial hygienist, certified safe professional, and a certified instructional trainer. Don holds a master's in science and environmental health with a concentration in exposure monitoring from Marshall University Graduates College, a Master's of Art in Education from the University of Findlay, and a BS in Chemistry from Marshall University. Good morning.
Good morning, Don. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, too. So what's your thoughts about being back in...
Oh, my gosh. Is this not incredible? This conference, of course, is just incredible, gold standard to meet people. Frank said it the best. Not only do you get the first-timers, dinner was just incredible. We went down for that breakfast. I told someone my first conference was 1994. They said, really? Well, I don't want to make you feel old, but I wasn't even born in 94. Just the emerging professionals, the mid-tenure professionals and the mature, it's incredible the networking that goes on.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the keys to this type of conference is the networking. Absolutely. So as the chair of Acjh, what are your goals to accomplish during your time as chair?
They're done, and for Frank, he's probably going to hear this a million times, and all of the board supports this. A rising tide raises all ships. We are so fortunate in the OEHS community that we now are able to work together. If the pandemic has taught us anything, we all need to respect each other and work together. So those accomplishments would be, our physical agents committee. The work that they're doing with heat stress is incredible. The industrial ventilation, some of the work they did during the pandemic under the leadership of John Hell was just incredible. And of course, we've got this little bioaerosols committee you may know about.
I've heard of it.
This is doing some great things that are going to basically prepare us for the future. So what a great time. And those are my kind of goals on the, as the chair.
Great, thanks. I appreciate that. And appreciate the plug for the bioaerosols.
That's right. That's right.
So, Frank, what does ACJH see coming up in the near future for new courses, publications, et cetera?
Great question. So, for 20 years or so, there was one, two, maybe three publications produced by Acjh, and they were high quality. We're talking about our annual TLV book, the OEV guide. Every third year, we would produce a design manual for industrial ventilation, and we're still on track for those. This week, for example, we're rolling out the pre-sale for 4 publications just this week that are new to Acjh, including an air sampling technologies manual, an atlas for fungal spores. We have the first time since 1999 an update to the bioaerosols book for assessment and control. We're so excited that Don and his colleagues on our bioaerosols committee have been working diligently for years to update that book that is so necessary for our community, of course. That's what's coming here in a very short time period, as well as, of course, the update to the annual TLVs for 2023. And what's nice is that the 31st edition of our design manual will have COVID-related controls in it. It's always the best tool globally for designing and the opportunity to maintain industrial ventilation systems through our scientific acumen. But to include those COVID-related controls is going to be very exciting. One other nice opportunity coming up September, and beyond that, there'll be an 8-week virtual learning opportunity beginning in October. Every Tuesday, starting October 11th, for 8 consecutive weeks, there'll be a bioaerosols virtual course to correlate with the book and everything. I think Don Elswick said it best. It's forward facing. It's all very futuristic on how to overcome these very serious bioaerosols agents that our community, our scientific community, is experiencing. So much in the hopper, so much growth, innovation, but sustainable progress in the very recent times.
So you mentioned the Tuesdays, the broadcast, the webinars. I always think of Taco Tuesdays. I figured this would be a good supplement to that.
That's right.
So but let's go back over the TLVs, and you mentioned another publication that goes with them. Perhaps you could give a little bit more information about that, the documentation.
Well, and that's what's so enlightening about not only this conference, where ACJH in particular, AIHce as well, AIHce, led by Don Elswick and his colleagues and Don Weeks on our board of directors at the time. So we're talking March, April, May of 2020, when the world was collapsing, and we decided to pivot into the opportunity at hand regarding virtual. And so with that has always been this heightened expectation, this hope that our scientific community would readily embrace at higher levels the scientific documentation that supports the numeric values of TLVs and BEIs. And so with collaboration with AIHA and with our own opportunities to try and push that boulder uphill, because that's unfortunately not been the pervasive case around the world scientifically, to always try and align a numeric value with how our scientific committees, chemical substances, biological exposure indices, physical agents, came to that conclusion. So now can be obstructive. So the Data Hub is available to anyone around the world for $9 a month. And we feel that that price point, again, the ability to capture a TLV in the field on your phone, that is really, really exceptional. We think, and again, and to have those documentations right there, so easily accessible. $9 a month, starting at acjh.org.
Great, that's terrific. So Don, what do you foresee what can we see AIHA and ACJH continue forward to?
And I've got to tell you, this is so exciting because if you're at the conference or if you've looked at the schedule, tomorrow, Wednesday, 10:30, we're going to have John Mulhausen and I are going to introduce one of the most dynamic joint ventures with improving exposure assessment. As a young naval officer and industrial hygienist in Long Beach, California, many people on here, and I've talked to some of those IHs that were in the Navy, we were presented with little evidence and we had to make decisions. And quite frankly, looking back now, those decisions could have been better. Well, guess what? John, myself, Frank, and Larry have gotten together and we've said, let's put a group of experts together. And what a dynamic group. So again, they're already meeting. They're working together on things. They're looking at tools. They're also doing what's incredible. We're looking at susceptible, vulnerable populations throughout the world. So it's not just North American centric, it is worldwide. So if, again, that committee is available, they're out there, they're taking feedback, it's just incredible. And then just the cherry on top of the dessert with AIHA and ACGIH, and we're doing the Define the Science process. What a great way for us to really look at how do we impact research. And again, at 1 o'clock, that's rolling out with a lot of effort, a lot of discussion. And this group got together, pulled close to 100 people together virtually, started talking through things. Now guess what? They're getting ready to take action. Those are just two of the initiatives. The biggest thing I can say is we're encouraging volunteerism back and forth to really just do what we know we want to do, just improve the worldwide health. So that's just two, but obviously any members, contact Donna that was just here, myself, Frank, Larry, let us know what you need to do. We're all about our members.
I mean, but that's essential, getting member participation, you can't just have everything on the shoulders of a few people in the industry.
Well, and remember, that is what we want to do. We want to empower. If John and I'll give you for instance, John was kind enough when I adjunct instructor at Alabama. John helped out with that class. Well, guess what? By helping, he just really raised a generation of physicians in this case up to an area that they had never seen occupational environmental health.
And you're talking John Mulhausen.
Yeah, John Mulhausen. So it was just incredible. Thank you. But that's what we want. We want engagement, empowerment, and by the way, just an overall raising all ships by that rising tide. So that's it. Thank you.
Fabulous.
That's great.
So Frank and Don, I have a question for both of you. What do you think will be the next areas of health and safety practice that will grow over the next few years, and how will ACJH help facilitate that growth?
I'll start with that one because Frank knows my passion, if that's okay. If you haven't heard, there's a national emphasis program on heat stress, and OSHA has presented. ACGIH is so involved in that, and the Physical Agents Committee. I want you to know we're not only looking at traditional, paths with the physiological heat exposures. We're using technology, and by the way, we're engaging emerging professionals so they can be involved with the solution up front and behind. So obviously, heat stress is one of the areas. I'll kind of bounce over to you for another one.
You nailed it, Don, and really it's the scientific acumen of heat, stress, and strain, whole body vibration, a number of physical agents, but of course those chemical substances that we lean into, the industrial ventilation side of things, bioaerosols, as we've talked about earlier. Don touched on something I think is important for your listeners and the overall OEHS community. ACJH has taken a very assertive and ambitious approach to the next generation. our emerging professional community is trying to tap into groups like AIHA and Acjh. Acjh identified that student populations right now, anyone matriculated in an OEHS discipline around the world, it is free to be a member at Acjh. It costs nothing. And those folks get all the benefits. The data hub we talked about, for free. All of the webinars that have the applicable opportunities to engage educationally. All of the publications that have either a complimentary element to them or a significant discount. That's all part of their member benefit, complimentary as a student. For emerging professionals, we're trying to cultivate, again, that next generation into, I mean, it's a selfish thing, of course, organizationally for us. We're trying to build the bench for not only the 5 scientific committees that we currently have. We, as Don knows, the board of directors are trying to facilitate all of this enthusiasm coming into Acjh very recently about how they can participate from an emerging professional standpoint or a seasoned professional. We're looking to increase our scientific and standing committees. There might be 3 new Acjh committees within the next year, including a healthcare committee, an emerging professionals committee, and an air sampling committee. So it's a very exciting time. These emerging professionals don't pay full dues at Acjh. Instead of $205 within your first 5 years out of grad school, you're looking at $95 entry point. Again, just that opportunity to cultivate the next generation, something that, again, I credit the board of directors at Acjh for being so forward-thinking and futuristic in how we're going to groom that next generation of scientist, academician, and researcher.
That's great. So taking it from the beginning, as you said, the emerging professionals and the students, eventually they're going to be wanting to join committees. How does someone join one of your technical committees?
Don, that is a great question because we joke. So Acjh, we're very proud of our staff. It's rather lean. We're not as big as some groups, including AIHA. We have 13 staff members and potentially could grow here a little bit. We've actually grown our staff in the last 4 years. Surprisingly, even amidst the pandemic, but again, because of the programming and the enthusiasm. But Phil Rauscher on my staff, our senior director of publications, science, and education, and I joke, it's more grueling to become a member on a scientific committee at Acjh than it is even to be elected on the board of directors. That's no offense to anyone that is, because we know that you're elected by your peers. But there is such a rigid standard to be qualified for the current committees. Now, these other new 3 that we're talking about, air sampling, emerging professionals, healthcare, not to say the rules will be laxed, but with this influx of talent that we know exists globally, really it's about an application process that starts with our website, acjh.org, finding a mentor, which is always a wonderful thing anyway, whether you're looking to volunteer on a committee or not. Mentorship in this industry has proven to be the path for great success to truly make a difference scientifically within the OEHS industry. Those 2 elements alone can hopefully position someone into volunteerism opportunities with Acjh at very high levels.
That's great. No, I was wondering then, of course, if you could become part of a committee, obviously there's a workload involved. What would you say would be the typical yearly workload for a committee?
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of hit this. So again, we know everyone's busy, and we know coming out of the pandemic, it's been exceptionally, we need more. People have taken off. As I used to say, instead of that marathon, they're asking people to do that 100-meter dash. Here's what we end up doing. Our committee chairs are so great about dividing work, and I call it divide and conquer, of course. They'll have a goal, but they'll break it down into subcommittees, and they'll break it into what I call bite-sized bits that they'll do it. Normally, we have committees that say, hey, we want you to do 1 document a year, or if they're working on a publication, maybe it's a chapter, but those chairs really work with people and also go to their strength areas so they can work to balance what we all want, that balance between work and life and job and everything else demanding, and it goes really well. And with the emerging professionals, that's very important because that balance needs to be there. So it varies from committee to committee, but normally some years we'll have committee members who, let's say the average is 1 or 2 documents, all of a sudden they'll do 10 because their work has changed or it's very close to the research they're doing. And then other years, they have to drop down because, let's face it, life takes over. So it's really varied, but trust me, you learn so much. I sit on these calls, and again, Frank knows this, you just feel like, wow, I'm at the forefront of science, and it's incredible.
No, that's great. And of course, once you've done the work and the publication comes out, one of the things that we talk about is awards.
That's right.
And so could you give a little bit of information about what the ACJH awards are about?
Great question, Don. So we have essentially 7 awards. One recognizing bioaerosols excellence, the Phil Morey Award. One recognizing advancements in industrial ventilation, the Bob Hughes Award. We have a Bloomfield Award, which is to recognize an emerging professional. A Meritorious Award recognizing overall achievement for essentially a career within the OEHS community. And a number of other awards. We have a Toxicology Award called the Stockinger Award. We have a Steiger Award representing more of how those relationships outside of the scientific scope can benefit groups like ACjh. And actually, this is award season for us. So for any of the listeners that are interested in identifying a particular individual worthy of significant recognition. In the old days, it used to occur here at AIHce. Of course, now because of the pandemic, things have been pared down. ACjh now over the last 2 years and expected this year will have a virtual annual meeting in October, recognizing all of our award winners, and again, those opportunities to nominate someone or identify past winners and where the future might hold for certain recognition found at acjh.org.
Great. So there is an application format that you need to follow in terms of that, but and is there an opportunity for self-nomination?
There is, absolutely, and we welcome and encourage that. In fact, Don was touching on it before, the ability to balance work life, professional life, personal life with volunteerism at ACjh. One of the very best entryways into that is it's not so much a self-nomination for an award. It's to take a look at what's on what's called our Notice of Intended Change for either a TLV, a BEI, physical agent, chemical substance. The ability to comment on those substances that are under study or that are positioned to be changed into a real TLV at some point. That's an opportunity at no cost for someone to kind of, try it before you buy it, if you will. Get involved, look at the scientific documentation in your research, in your field of practice, in your classroom. If you're hearing something different or the same, there are a lot of comments that come in to support the TLVs based on further evidence that they've seen on the field. That all is very helpful and can position someone who makes that comment better within their personal career and, of course, provides an entree into further engagement with ACjh.
So that's a good point to make in terms of people coming from outside the committees and having some research or practical experience with this. Where would they find a way in which to be able to communicate that?
Sure, right on our website again, and it goes section by section. So currently, it's a comment opportunities within the 5 scientific committees we have. Not so much on our bioaerosols committee. They've been so diligently working, as Don knows, on producing the 2nd edition of this book. But at some point, there'll be other educational opportunities or potentially TLVs or what we call bioaerosols agents related to perhaps endotoxins or what have you, where there could be some comments. But we're looking really at the industrial ventilation science, the chemical substances sciences, physical agents. Don has rattled off a number of them, but we're talking radiation, lasers, whole body vibration, noise, heat, stress, and strain. So many elements there, and of course, biological exposure indices, which really are positioned, particularly internationally outside of North America, to be looked at a very higher level of scientific acumen by ACjh here in the future.
Great, great. So Don, what ACJH programs, projects, and publications do you think would be of technical assistance to the new IH coming into the field?
Yeah, and as an emerging professional, if you have not looked at the air sampling, a guide that book that we just published, it is incredible. I have had so many instructors from different universities come up and say, wow, this is great. The publications committee is also looking at other textbook to help professors, and which, by the way, emerging professionals will be exposed to. I always say, make sure the white papers, go out and look at our white papers, look at the publications that are coming out. We've mentioned the bioaerosols book. What a game changer that's going to be. And my favorite one, and if you've been following our emails, Protect the Worker. If you have been in this community and remember some of the stories from AIHce that we used to attend, where people used to have stories about, events that happened as an OEHS professional, this book it's going to be reasonably priced and just a great gift that takes emerging mature professionals, gives them a common point to talk about. So really exciting, those publications. And I always say, if you've got ideas for publications or ideas, Frank kind of hits it, I'll make it more personal. Go to that science@acjih.org, send Phil Rauscher an email, say, hey, I have this need for a publication. This Protecting the Workers, we really came from our membership up. It was not an idea that the staff, the board of directors came up with. Our members pushed this. So it's just a great thing that we were able to put this together. So that's just some of them. Again, not to send everyone, if you're not on our mailing list, every week we do what I'll call a correspondence. Occasionally even Frank lets me do a little chairs notes in there on things that I've seen and things that I talk about. A lot of it's about leadership and how important this OEHS community is as a group of leaders and how important we are to the world. So that's some of the publications.
That's great. Yeah, as a trainer though, Don, what
Yeah.
do you anticipate will happen with online training and conferences and webinars in the future? Will they continue to grow?
Yeah. Course, like the other 26, and again, very North American centric, has looked at where we're going to go. It's really going to be, if you look at the evidence and enrollment, about a 60-40. People still, and by 60% will ask for that face-to-face, 40% will need that virtual. So as a trainer, where do I think virtual is going to go? It'll probably stay at that 40%. But we've got to be able to engage learners. And by engaging, it's not an instructor that face-to-face you can tell, well, this just isn't going. How do you see those people? Some people can't even operate their cameras. Do you do, polls and different things you're going to do? And by the way, when you're doing polls, how do you make sure they're independent? So the virtual will only go up, but in a percentage, I think it'll stay that way. But the biggest thing is instructor-led, participant-centered. We virtual more along that lines. But again, there's nothing like sitting face-to-face, talking to someone and learning 6 feet apart. No, go ahead.
Don, I totally concur with that. I've been doing online distance learning training through our program since 15. And yeah, that's the paramount thing. Webinars, you can't train with a webinar. The one directional, it has to be bi-directional. You have to be able to see your students remotely. You have to be, you can do that with Zoom meetings and all different types of platforms. You can actually, get a view of those. And like you said, I think it's a little bit more of a challenge for the instructor to understand how to work in that environment and to be engaging, because there's this, dulling of your senses when you're online. So you have to have breakouts. You have to have hands-on activities that the participants can do remotely. And,
Or send to them, absolutely.
And if you can do that, and I think you actually can have very effective distance learning. One of the things we've learned with polls is, the nice thing about the polling and asking questions, as an instructor, you can get feedback that maybe in a live classroom, a student won't raise their hand because they're afraid of being wrong. But, when they can remotely hit the instructor with something, you actually can get a pulse.
Well, pressure. I've got to be able to, put their hand on it, watch them do it, let them see the system. So it's going to balance for those that say it's all virtual. And, again, we're doing some things with my simple shows where we're using artificial intelligence to actually write a script, match up great little objects and things there. We've had one, I get tired of people asking, do industrial hygienists clean teeth? So what? Guess what? I created a simple show that says what industrial hygiene is, just so I can say, here's what.
That's great. Frank, one last question for you. But I wanted to put in a plug first for the industrial ventilation conference coming up in Toronto the third week in June, which Acjh is sponsoring with with ASHRAE.
Yes.
So that's coming up as well. But last question for you is, what has been the most difficult part of your job as an ED?
Sure, good question. I will tell you, it's about facilitating all of this enthusiasm. There was just a period where Acjh did a lot of good things, but it wasn't necessarily looking to reach out and identify different ways for folks to engage. And now, over the last particular 3 years, even amidst the pandemic, we would put on 1, 2, maybe 3 webinars a year for several years, for almost 20 years. We put on 20 in 2021. I'm sorry, in 2020. This year, we're poised to do 30 webinars. And the way that we're doing that, we've been talking about engagement a lot today, is about identifying, they're not infomercials, but they're ways that the scientific community can give back through these webinars. Not exactly the PDC type training, but this opportunity to spread the science. That's really the mission of Acjh, and that has been a very challenging component to so rewarding for myself and my fellow board of directors at Acjh.
And Don, I want to say the hardest thing as a chair, and I want everyone to hear this, is to get out. Our board of directors, Frank and I, are just so blessed to have an incredible, dedicated set of board of directors. So it's challenging to recognize and really reward their efforts. We double their pay all the time. Well, wait a minute, they make $0, so we can do it. Yeah. But then you move from that board of directors to our 5 committees. Oh my gosh, they're chairs and vice chairs. I find it so challenging to tell them, thank you, what a great thing you're doing. So that fortunate recognition. And then it doesn't end there for Frank and I. I tell him we're just the orchestra directors. What a great orchestra we have, our volunteers. My gosh, it is so hard. In our booth, thank goodness, we have Brooke Murphy that came up with a little ACGIH swag. So if you're at the conference or you want to hit Brooke up, she's on the website. She designed a little recognition. It's truly a Superman logo with ACGIH on it. Get that. Realize we think you're super volunteers, and we want to do whatever we can do. So, Don, I jumped on his question. That's our hardest thing to recognize that.
Absolutely. So, we're out of time, but I do appreciate what you came by today to talk to us about ACJIH. It's been really great, and thank you very much. And back to Bob.
Yeah, the enthusiasm was crazy. I love it. You guys, this type of enthusiasm just has to spark participation and engagement.
We've been very fortunate, and that's very kind of you to say.
Yeah, thank you, Bob, so much for having us.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Don.
Our pleasure. Look forward to seeing you again. So our continuing coverage from AIHce in Nashville, Tennessee. We'll take a brief pause. We're back in 15, right, Don?
That's correct.
Boy, there's no break. There's no rest for the wicked.
That's
here.
right.
And the live broadcast. So we'll be back online in a little bit, and throughout the day and tomorrow. So stick with us. You can get to the recordings of these broadcasts in the next day or so at global.healthyindoors.com. It'll all be featured there. It's all available to everybody worldwide. So taking a quick pause here. We'll see you all in just a little bit.